Hello everyone, Republic Jim here. I'm just making my way up on our upper property to a place I picked out from my overnight campsite. Just stopped at the top of the ridge to get a little bit of a breather, and then I'll continue on to my destination. It's right about 11 o'clock at night, and I decided that rather than coming in earlier and setting up with daylight and doing things, I would make it more of a realistic scenario of coming in at night, setting up a tarp shelter, and preparing to spend the night like I would if it was some sort of emergency or I was out on a SAR mission and something went wrong or anything like that. So it'll be good practice setting up my shelter just by headlamp and that sort of thing. I am not planning on making a fire tonight just because I don't feel like gathering up wood, and most of the snow is melted away by now, and so there's a lot more exposed ground. So even though things are wet, I really don't want to risk starting a fire, and I don't feel like taking the time to scrape away all the grass and everything else and make a decent fire pit. So anyway, but I did bring along some other stuff just to experiment with as far as some supplemental heat, just to see what it's like. I don't expect I'll actually use it all night long. Forecast said there's like a really slight chance of snow flurries tonight, but probably not because it's looking pretty clear. And the low is supposed to be around 21 degrees. And I have some decent gear in my pack for sleeping, and so I think I should be fairly decent shape without any sort of additional heat. But you know, if I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm cold, then I can always heat something up and see how that works out. But anyway, I'm going to shut up and get to my campsite and get my shelter put up so I can hopefully get some rest. Okay, I have a rough shelter set up. I came up here with no real plan of what I was going to do, and just used the space that I had available in between the trees, made kind of a improvised lean-to. Got my emergency tarp down there for a ground cloth, and my sleeping pad, which I will finish inflating the rest of the way shortly. And I have my poncho and liner there for bedding. I also have a pretty decent breathable emergency bivvy if I need some extra warmth, so I could use that also. And as you can see, I shed my coat. I was getting pretty warm doing the different stuff here, getting set up, but it's currently about 24, 25 degrees. Don't know how well that shows up, but anyway, it's below freezing, but not by a lot. It's relatively comfortable. And as you can see, there's still a fair amount of snow in the area. But the spot that I'm in is in between some trees and pretty sheltered. And there's this big pine tree here that drops needles everywhere around it. So I am going to gather up some more of those and shove them underneath my tarp there to provide a little more padding and insulation from the ground. And once I get that set up, then I'll be about ready for bed. I'll probably break out my other gear that I brought and do a little experimenting with the supplemental heat, but not that it's really needed, but just because I want to try it out. But pretty soon I am actually going to have to go to bed because it's after 11:30 now, and I'd like to get some sleep. I'll need to get up in the morning and get out of here fairly early so I can get ready for church. So I'm going to wrap it up for now and gather up some more pine needles and get everything ready to settle in for the night. Okay, so I am ready to turn in for the night. It's just a few minutes after midnight, and as you can see, I've got an inflatable pillow here, and I'm actually in my emergency bivvy also, and then I have my poncho and liner over that, because as soon as I finished inflating my sleeping pad and went to lay on it, I found that it's got a leak somewhere, and it just instantly went pretty much flat. So I don't have a whole lot of insulation from the ground other than what I have from the pine needles and, you know, my ground tarp and stuff. So rather than waking up in an hour or two cold because of the, you know, the ground contact there, I just went ahead and got my emergency bivvy to slip inside and give a little more warmth, and then the pillow also. And that freed up my coat, so if I need to, I can wear that or put it under me or whatever it takes. But, you know, so unfortunately, without a decent sleeping pad, it might be a little colder than what I was anticipating for tonight, but I'll make the best of it. And I decided not to mess around with the heater setup for tonight just because it's too much hassle to drag stuff out and set it up, and I really would like to just get some rest at this point instead of taking more time trying to experiment with something else. I'll just have to do that on some other outing. But that's gonna do it for tonight. Hopefully I'll be able to sleep fairly well and not get too cold from the ground, but I will update later. Good morning, everyone. It's about a 6:15 Sunday morning. I just did get up. I can't say that it was an especially comfortable night, but I did get a fair amount of sleep. Not as much as I would have liked, of course. This morning, turkeys have been really noisy, but as I said last night, I did end up using my bivy bag and inside of the poncho and liner, and I am glad that I decided to do that, because that made it a lot more bearable. And right now, looks like the forecaster's got it pretty correct. It looks like it's about 20 degrees at the moment. So anyway, unfortunately, because of the late time that I got up here last night, I didn't bother to do some of the stuff that I'd planned. So I ended up lugging along some extra gear that I didn't need for that. But I'll just have to do that some other time. Right now, I'm going to have to get a little more circulation in my legs and start packing up my camp and getting ready to head on back. Feels like the snow is good and hard right now, so should make for some relatively easy going, just walking on top of it. And that's about all for this outing. I'm just going to wrap it up now and get things done that I need to. Hey, I'm back. It's late afternoon on Sunday, and came back up to the campsite. I cut out rather abruptly this morning because I realized that time was getting on and I needed to get going and allow time to get back down to the house, and you know, I just didn't have time to pack everything up or do any other filming. So I gathered up my basic stuff, and then I just went ahead and dropped my tarp on top of my bedroll and left that there, carried my pack down, and came back up to pack everything up. Thankfully, it's been dry today, so the tarp has had a chance to air out and doesn't have any dew on it or anything, so I can just fold it up and put it away and get all my gear ready to go again, just in case I need it for this coming week. I just wanted to touch on a couple of lessons learned from this little overnight excursion. One is obviously one that I should know, is checking my gear before heading out. It would have been really good to know that my sleeping pad was not holding air. Now that I know, I need to figure out where the leak is and repair that. But that's something that I should have been aware of ahead of time, because if I'd been depending on that for some insulation from the ground in an emergency, that wouldn't have been a whole lot of fun. So I will either get that one fixed or get my backup one back on the pack. But either way, obviously I need to do a little bit better job of checking on my gear and making sure it's all mission ready. And another one that kind of came to mind in the middle of the night when I was feeling the chill from the ground is that even though I got up here late and was really tired and just wanted to go to bed, I should have taken the time to break out some of the stuff at least that I wanted to experiment with. One of the items, which is pretty basic, is I have a candle lantern, but I've never actually used it on an overnight. And so I should have just taken the time to get that out and stuck it in a corner of my shelter, and with the reflective surface of the underside of the tarp and also the reflective surface on my ground tarp, I think a candle lantern would have provided a reasonable amount of warmth. Not really sure. And of course I could have taken the time to set up the tarp shelter in a different configuration that kind of held a little more heat in. If it had been snowing or raining, I would have put the front lower, made a smaller space, more sheltered from the elements, and made it easier to keep the warmth in. But I don't know if the candle lantern or my other heating source would have made too much difference with the cold coming from the ground, but it would have been worth making the effort to experiment with that rather than just deciding to pass and go straight to bed, because it definitely could have had a positive effect on my sleep for the rest of the night. So sometimes a little bit of extra work at the start pays off further along in the night or whenever. So that's something that I thought about later, and of course at that point it was sort of too late. One good thing that I learned was I did make the effort to bring along an extra pair of thin sock liners, and before I crawled into bed I pulled off my wool socks, put on those sock liners, and then put my good wool socks back on. And on this night my feet stayed warm all night long, unlike couple of other times where I've just been wearing wool socks without anything else. So just having that extra little bit of insulation there with the liners made a big difference, and I'm glad that I did that, and it's good to know that for future reference. I highly recommend it. Now, of course, if your feet are wet and sweaty or anything, take the time to dry them off too. But when I got here my feet were totally dry, so I just put on the liners, which are just like a polyester mix, I think. But Worked great. Had some good alpaca wool socks on too, and then with the emergency bivvy and the poncho and liner, made a pretty good sleep system other than just that ground contact. I guess the other real takeaway there is that I should, before I put my ground tarp down, I should have taken the time to gather up more pine needles and make a much thicker bed of those, because it would have been a little more padding for comfort, and it would have also insulated a lot more. But of course I was expecting that the sleeping pad was going to work, so I didn't really anticipate that. But if I'd had the extra pine needles there, it wouldn't have mattered. So another lesson learned there is just taking a little bit extra time. You know, it might be more sleepy by the time I get into bed, but if I can get a better night's sleep over the course of the night, then that would more than pay off any investment in time up front. So anyway, I need to get busy and get my tarp and my bedding packed up again and on the pack, and get ready to head back down the hill before the sun starts going behind the ridge and any clouds roll in. It's really nice right now, but I need to take advantage of that and get this done. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed coming along for the little outing and found it interesting. This has been Republic Jim. I'll talk to you later.